Hi guys, Kellan and I spend all of our time trying to figure out how to navigate complicated cannabis challenges. Today, we're excited to bring to you a solution for your accounting needs. Navigating 280E, keeping clean books, and providing financial and accounting advice is a massive headache for so many businesses. End to End is a team of CPAs with backgrounds from the big public firms that specialize in the cannabis industry. End to End is offering a no-cost consultation if you tell them the dime sent you. That's right, free accounting advice. Go to n2nadvisors.com now to take advantage of this. That's N, the number 2, NADVISORS.com to get free accounting advice now.
Let's talk about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. That's right. No more excuses. Get your lazy ass off the couch. Go start a podcast. There's the creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Once again, no more excuses. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Couldn't be easier. Even better, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's right. They're paying us for this ad. Thank you very much, Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started now.
This is The Dime, a 10-minute dive into the cannabis and hemp industry through trends, insights, predictions, and tangents.
I feel like it's a good guess, right? Like, do you have a guess, Bryan?
It's really interesting because in dispensaries before the world ended with COVID, right, people would get a big whiff of the cannabis, and some people would love that skunk smell, that skunky smell. But I wonder if they're driving on the road with you, Kellan, and that skunk is murdered and the odor is given off, are people still enjoying the smell, or is the association of the relaxed feeling of consuming the cannabis the reason that they've kind of associated skunk with a positive illicit feeling? It's funny, you have so many people who smell skunk and it's disgusting, it's pungent, it's horrific. It is that defense mechanism like you've spoken about, but then you have others who literally take a big whiff of a jar of cannabis and go, amazing, right? Like,
yeah, no,
like it's incredible to think that society is separated like that. And I wonder if they'll do experiments where people who love that smell of the skunk-like smell will just go to like an actual skunk. And maybe even one step further, these individuals, maybe cultivators will utilize the actual real skunk pungent smell, capture it in some sort of jar, and then just spread it on the flower.
Yeah, and I think honestly though, right there, that's an excellent point, Bryan, and it highlights actually a huge issue within companies operating in the space, right? A lot of people love that smell, a lot of growers, all those people, right? But at the end of the day, when these companies are building out these facilities and they're actually cultivating cannabis indoors in, say, an industrial park, because you have that other side of the population that literally cannot stand the smell, potentially because of the reasons we just talked about, that's why these companies are mandated to implement smell mitigation systems, right? So like they literally have to show the city that they have an actual plan in place to mitigate the smells like you would for an HVAC system. But now you have to show that you're scrubbing the air that's exiting your facility too, so that you're not stinking up the whole place, you know, the whole industrial lot, if you will.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that makes me believe. I don't recall exactly which hot sauce company it was, whether it was Cholula or Sriracha, where they had all these issues with that. And I mean, that's probably where we're headed, in some sort of like smell mitigation factory similar to what they went through, because like there's no chance that a facility could grow as much cannabis and it could just populate around the surrounding areas. Parents don't want their kids to be smelling that, especially if it's like near a local school. And now you've got jurisdictions and all these location perimeters. It's super, super complicated. So there's definitely going to have to institute those.
I mean, that's why we have the Green Mile in Colorado, right? And so they recognized this, the city of Denver did. And they literally said, if you want to cultivate cannabis inside in the city of Denver, you have to go to this specific area, which is next time you're in Colorado, we'll roll the windows down, driving in from the airport. And it's literally on the I-70 corridor from in between downtown and the international airport. And like there is times of the year where it's wild. Like you can literally, and these are facilities that are supported by PE, private equity, and have capital to put the proper systems in place, and they have, and they're still not able to mitigate it. Like you were talking with Sriracha, and it's wild. Like you can drive down the I-70 corridor at certain times of the year and you're just like, wow, it smells like straight skunk or straight cannabis. You know what I mean? And so that's what literally Colorado did. And it'll be really interesting to see how other states and municipalities within those states kind of tackle that same problem, if you will, right?
We should, I wonder if there's any universities right around the Green Mile in Denver, because that's probably a very popping location for some co-eds. And maybe just a stoner idea, but why don't they just surround their factory with dryer sheets and then you've kind of consumed the smell completely. Maybe it's a little ridiculous, but like it works in college. Like they should institute those areas.
No, I'm gonna write that down. We should literally email the owners of those facilities that.
Yeah, that's definitely a stoner idea for sure. All right, prediction time. Will the odor associated with cannabis become more or less of an issue as legalization expands and as the technology advances in the industry?
Less of an issue, because I think as the industry expands, there's going to have more adoption of the cannabis plant. The cultural stigma will kind of break down, and I think a lot of people that didn't like the smell associated the smell with cannabis and then associated cannabis with the devil's lettuce or something really negative, right? And so that kind of series of associations with the smell was facilitating negative opinions associated with it. And I think as that stigma changes, the feelings associated with that smell will also change. What do you think?
The bags to mitigate it, or the jars to mitigate the smell, I think will become increasingly popular. We went to the Speakeasy in New York City after the cannabis conference last year, and JJ from Minnesota had homegrown me some bud that he had cultivated specifically for some of the areas of my interest that I was looking for. And he handed it to me, and I was very gracious for that, except for the fact that I was in New York City and had to travel home with all that. And there wasn't an easy way to transport it, because I can only imagine how many looks on the way home I got, since I woke up in the morning and my wife was convinced that a skunk had died in our house. And I had to encourage her over and over again that there was no dead skunk. It was my friend JJ who had grown me some pot in Minnesota and had brought it to me. And let's just say that if I had myself a little bag or a jar that had contained that smell, I think we could have avoided that uncomfortable conversation of searching for a dead skunk in our house.
I definitely believe that.
All right, do it.
All right, you work in a cultivation facility. You're surrounded by cannabis. On your way from work, you get pulled over and you reek of weed. Does the officer arrest you for driving under the influence?
What a terrible situation already. They're going to have some evaluation test, something similar to a DWE test that quantifies the legalities of my bloodstream to ensure if I'm under the influence or not. I mean, the same thing if you work in a bar, right? If you're a bartender and someone spills like booze all over you, or you smell like vodka or tequila or whatever horrendous booze smell combined all over you, I mean, it's the same concept. The officer's not going to take one whiff at you and be like, well, you definitely smell like a booze factory. Get out of the car. You're going to jail. They'll do some sort of roadside test, because my assumption is that police officers can't be operating as much under assumptions as they can be with some sort of statistical measurement to determine the safetiness of your driving. So I would assume there's a test. Do they have any of those tests in Denver? How do they do that now?
So there is a test. So this is actually probably going to be one of the most controversial subjects once the excitement in the media kind of about legalization has waned and it's more accepted. This is going to be the next big topic that's approached from a conversational standpoint. And I'm going to tell you right now, the system's broken that they have right in place. If your eyes are bloodshot, they can pull you out of the car and do a roadside sobriety test. Based on their judgment, they can then arrest you for a DUI, bring you in, and then they're going to do a blood draw, right? So they're going to draw your blood, And currently, the levels that are determined that you are no longer capable to operate a motor vehicle is around 10 nanograms per deciliter of blood. So if you have 10 nanograms of THC per deciliter of blood, you are inhibited to the point where you cannot drive. The controversy associated with this is that if you're a chronic cannabis user, say you consume cannabis every day, that level will not go below 15 nanograms per deciliter unless you quit for 30 days straight. So you have medical patients who are prescribed this medicine and need this medicine to function in the real world, and say they may not have consumed cannabis all day and they just consume it at night, and they're driving home from work and they get a cop that's didn't have a good day, or for whatever reasons ends up getting pulled over, goes through the whole thing. That individual will get a DUI, even though he didn't consume cannabis all day long. We can talk about the merits, and we can talk about if you think that's right, and we can talk about all of the kind of emerging technology that's coming out from the science perspective to try to address that. But if you want to hear about that, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode.
Yeah, I figured that's a really good gateway into it, but I was fearful you were going to go too far in and that we were going to have to just continue this. So, thanks everyone for listening. Catch you next week.
I'm Larry Michigan. I'd like to invite you to join Jim, Marty, and me on our weekly podcast, The Deadhead Cannabis Show. Each week we explore the latest cannabis and jam band news and reminisce with other cannabis industry deadheads and jam band aficionados about the great musical acts that we've seen and heard. Check out a new episode every Monday at mjbulls.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.